Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. My name is Eileen Donovan. I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement at the Lyman Allyn Art Museum, and have just had a really wonderful time working with Jack and the exhibition Blue Seeds Reflections on Foster Care. If you're able to get to New London sometime soon, we have just a couple more weeks of this exhibition up. It's open until December 3rd. And it's a really wonderful show. So artist Jack Lahav works with immersive vining sculptures and abstract paintings that intertwine the themes of fostering and the nurturing power of plants. Through vibrant blue installations that envelop and beguile, Lahav encourages viewers to explore the complex layers of human connection and growth. And you will hear from Jack about their experiences as a foster parent and the different inspirations behind this series and its reflections throughout. But what's also so key and important with this exhibition is the moment that we can use it as a tool to advocate on behalf of the children and people who work with foster and adoptive care families. And so later on during the call, I will drop into the chat a couple of different links and information about what the museum is hoping to do to support foster and adoptive families this coming year, and a couple of ways that people can maybe support just in the coming weeks as the show is still up and as we hit the end of the year and the holiday season. We are recording this call for the main presentation, but we will stop the recording when it comes to the question portion. So if you have sort of big, important, intimate questions regarding foster care and that process, you can feel free to air and share whatever you wish, so that then when we hit that point, everyone can speak comfortably. And with that, I will send it to Jack.
Hi, everyone. And so, Lori, do you have the screen share?
I do. Are you ready?
Yeah, I think let's just dive in. I think this is an intimate group, so maybe if somebody does have a question, pop it in the chat. I see Mariko just joined, so just so she knows too, this is being recorded. And I'd like to welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. And again, since it's intimate, you can just pop questions into the chat. We're going to be talking a little bit about what is fostering, especially in Connecticut, because every state is different, drastically different, which I'm learning more and more of. And maybe that's probably a whole other talk. I don't know. I've never heard anyone talk about like, the differences in all the states, but it's really interesting to me. And so we're going to talk a little bit about foster care, and then I'm going to interject personal stories and how it relates to the current show. So Lori, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, so my name is Lori Cody. I have worked for the Department of Children and Families for almost 30 years, and have spent the last 12 years working in the foster care division, and had the pleasure and opportunity of meeting Jack and Nora early in the pandemic, when they came forward to be licensed to provide foster care. And so really excited about the opportunity to partner between Jack's art exhibition and our messaging and just passing along information about foster care in Connecticut.
And I'm Jack. Oh, well, let me go back.
Yeah. Yes, go back. Let's go back.
And I'm Jack Lahav. I know Eileen already introduced me, but I'm the artist of the Blue Seeds exhibition at the Lyman Allyn. I've been a foster parent since 2021, I believe, so a little over 2 years. And I've always been interested in community, but during COVID, I really dove right in. I helped start a local racial justice group. I became a foster parent and really learning about ideas of community, how we are all bound together, especially by all the different and crazy stories out there.
Yeah, and you know what, Jack, just to tag into, you are absolutely right. From state to state, foster care looks very different. So it's amazing how different it can be from state to state. So tonight we're just going to talk to you about what it looks like here in Connecticut. For us as the Department of Children and Families, we have these are our key results. These are our guiding principles, if you will, and they are in order of preference of how our work is completed in doing what we can for children. So our first goal is always to be able to allow children to live safely at home with their families of origin. That's what we're always striving for as our first goal. When they're not able to do that, our second goal is to try to ensure that children are allowed to live with relatives, kin, or someone that they know in the community, and keep them in their communities in known environments. If that's not able to happen, then our next goal would be that all children live with family, and that's where foster care kind of comes into the equation. If they can't be with their biological parents, or they can't be with any relatives or kin, then we'd like to keep them with family in the community. There are a very small percentage of children who require some specialized care and need to be in congregate care settings, but we strive to use those very rarely and only for brief treatment, and then re-engage kids back out into the community. Our next goal is that all kids will experience permanency in a timely manner. It is all of our kids have experienced some sense of trauma in their life, and not knowing day to day what their life is going to be like is really unnerving. So we try to provide permanency as timely as possible for our children, so that they know that they are in a safe and consistent environment each day. And our overall goal is that children in care will be better off. They'll be healthy, safe, smart, strong, just like you would wish for any children that you know. And for our kids who do remain with us until they age out, which can be up to age 23, that they will be prepared to be successful adults and be able to take care of themselves and move out on our own. So that's what our goals are as an agency. And we have a few different types of foster care. So we have foster to adopt, or long-term foster care, who are families coming forward who are willing to foster, with the understanding and sometimes the goal that if a child is not able to be reunified, those families are also willing to become the long-term or adoptive resource for those children. So they will be their forever home. We have many families who only foster, and so that is their primary goal. And then they will assist us in transitioning a child to their permanency, whether that be a reunification home with biological family, and or transition to a relative or a kinship home, and or transition to a pre-adoptive home. But those families are not necessarily looking to become a long-term or an adoptive resource. We have a huge need now, significantly so, that we're trying to look at how we license families and prepare them to be emergency placements. So kids entering care does not necessarily happen between 8 and 5 every day. Lots of things happen at nighttime or on the weekends, and our staff that work those hours are in constant need of emergency placements. Folks in homes that can take children on an emergency basis for, up to 10 days sometimes, until we can take care of the legal pieces and vet through kinship and relatives or other resources to find the best placement resource for that child. And just like Jack said, it's a community, and it requires all of us as a community to take on this endeavor. So we need respite caregivers as well, who are able to care for kids who are in foster care for short periods of time, sometimes up to 2 weeks, so that foster and adoptive families can take care of some of their personal needs or personal emergencies, or maybe take a breather or a break, and you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's really important to have all of these pieces of the puzzle. So Jack, I'm going to let you step in and talk a little bit about what type of foster care you and Nora have done.
Yeah, we've done all three. We have an infant that we've been watching for about 2 years now. That's a very complicated case and is probably going to be reunified, but things are always uncertain with life. And that's, part of what we talk about in the show too, is this idea of we expect life to be simple and have a linear trajectory, but most of our lives do not follow a linear trajectory. And especially with fostering, it's, you're starting from a place of trauma often, where, something has gone wrong, and that's why we need the foster system. So we have done that longer term placement. We've done emergency placements, which is like a overnight, or I remember there was one Memorial Day where we got a call for Memorial Day, like Sunday morning, we get a call for 5 boys that needed a place to go. And we ended up taking 3 of the older boys because they couldn't find any housing. And I answer the phone and say no right off the bat, because that's my personality. And my wife Nora's personality is much more risk averse and says, let's try it. And it wound up being totally great. And they basically made smoothies and watched TV all weekend. So that's the kind of emergency placement that we're used to. But we're also, we have young children in the house, so we're a little choosy about what kind of placements we can allow. Because some of the placements they really have more needs. And if you're not, but it just goes to say that you can decide what you're capable of, and maybe push a little, but still have boundaries. And we've done respite care. We had a local family that had to go to Dubai for some reason, and their kids didn't have passports. And so we watched them for 10 days. And, it was totally, totally great. So we've done all of the above. We thought, the reason we got into foster care, and I don't know if I think we're going to get to that, but we got into foster care because of fertility issues. And we just thought it was an interesting way to expand our family while doing good. We didn't really understand what fostering was all about at the time, but I think it's similar to having kids. Like, before you have kids, you don't understand what it's all about. It's something that you have to step into in order to really, grasp the good and the bad.
Right. So again, all of these are our needs, and Jack just said it, it's a puzzle piece. And so when everybody takes a piece of that puzzle, that's how this works, and works for the kids who need it. When you talk about Nora being risk adverse, I have many folks who come through, especially on emergency placement, and think they can do anything for 48 hours, right? Like, how bad could it be for 48 hours? So I appreciate that characteristic. So types of caregivers that we have here in Connecticut. Again, our children can stay in care up to age 23. So we help them through post secondary education, whether that be college or a technical school or hairdressing school. We do have programs and opportunities for children to continue their education. We primarily, what I license for are our core foster families who are coming to foster and or adopt. They are not related to the children, so they're kind of our core group of foster homes. We also work very hard to license to secure kin or relatives for children, or fictive kin, people they may know, teachers, coaches, CCD teachers, anybody that they might know in the community. We are working hard every day to try to keep kids within their community, within their family systems, or someone in their community. And so we work hard to keep kids in kinship. And I think currently we have about the same number of kids in kinship home as in core homes. And I think it's, close to a 50-50 split there. many of our kids enter care and are considered medically complex, having experienced lots of adverse childhood experiences automatically makes them more prone to health risk and medical issues. So we have a graduated system of medically complex from level 1 to level 4, who are kids who maybe require medical technology or significant medications, those kinds of things. And we do offer extra training for families willing to take our more significantly medically complex children. And there is definitely a difference in services and pay scale and all that kind of stuff for our kids who require more medical care than your average child. And we also in Connecticut have functional family therapy foster care, which basically are for children who have more behavioral needs. And so they may require more services, and that is subcontracted out to private agencies who do almost a one-stop shopping. So they bring all the services to your home. So therapy, psychiatry, whatever services a child might need, they come with all that in place and come to your home to provide that for those children. Again, a higher level of care for kids who have experienced more trauma and who are really kind of struggling through that and may need some extra clinical services to help them resolve some of that trauma history for them. Right in the midst of the pandemic, as everything had just shut down, we in Connecticut joined the Quality Parenting Initiative, which is a nationwide movement to reform the foster care system as it was. In many states, and I think there are a couple countries and counties are kind of jumped on board to the QPI parenting initiative, and basically we value our caregivers as members of our team who build loving and nurturing relationships for the children and their families, and really working hard on the relationship building piece of that, like family support network expands and includes our foster families. So we're working hard to really kind of improve that as we are as a nation. So Jack, I'm going to let you tell your story.
All right, unmute. We already got into it a little bit, but we, fertility is a whole crazy thing in the world. Everybody's story is different. We have a story that we're finding more and more with our friend group, but you spend your 20s trying not to get pregnant, and then your 30s to 40s trying to get pregnant. And so we had a long journey. We used a bunch of science. Some of the science worked, some of the science didn't. We ended up having a little boy, Finn. He's our biological child in the center on the left. And then we decided we still wanted to expand the family. We kept trying and trying and trying, and it wasn't working out. So we had a good friend locally who had done foster care. They ended up adopting through foster. They had fostered 3 kids and then adopted 2 of them. And so, through that, their narrative, we decided to give it a shot. As I said, I'm a kind of a character. I'm risk averse. I'm an artist that loves being in their studio. And so luckily this whole thing happened during COVID and all the training shifted to online. And I don't know if I would have done it necessarily if I had to actually go somewhere. So that was a big revelation, is that we could do it online. And it was, just like a handful of not a handful. I mean, it's a good amount of meetings and trainings and having people come to your house and look at your place. But we did all of that. And then then we told them we wanted to be a pre-adoptive family, which means that they start calling you with different infants to a certain age. So we started out with saying we would like 0 to 2-year-olds. And they start calling us with all sorts of different people with or children with stories. And we had to decide in the moment, what can we accept and what can we not accept? And I'll get into that a little bit more later. So.
Yeah, Jack, just a quick question. So when they start calling, are all the children they're calling for 0 to 2?
No, of course not.
Just
There's such a need that, that it's always pushing.
yeah.
And, I think there were a few like a little bit over. There were also there were issues that we didn't even think of until we got the phone call for it. So, so whatever. And you have to then, there was a lot of research involved. You get a phone call for a child with fetal alcohol syndrome. And so, you immediately go to Google and try and figure out what does that mean? And what is it, where, what are the possibilities of that versus a child with opioid? Because you have to look at yourself and say, what are my capacities? Because this could, if you're looking to pre-adoptive, this could be potentially life-changing.
Right.
That said, if I went back in time and told myself back in time then, I would have reiterated that DCF has a sort of a mandate to try and reunify almost all the children with their bio family. So your job is I don't know, just get that permanency out of your mind a little bit more. And and tell yourself that the future is foggy in terms of what can happen.
And don't live by dates, right? So we always tell you dates of different things, court hearings and different things, but those are always moving targets. So that's always a thing.
So my wife is a graphic designer, and people are always giving her requests, and they say, I have a big presentation tomorrow. Can you make this happen ASAP? And I remember one of the first, it was a court date or some paperwork that was going to get filed. And the social worker said, oh yeah, we're going to file it ASAP. And we dug a little bit deeper, and that meant in a month.
Yes.
My wife was like, that is not ASAP.
Right. Different definition of ASAP.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, it's just that there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to fostering. And part of that is, I think, built into the bureaucracy. And I speak about this a good amount, but the idea of bureaucratizing childcare is extremely complex. Because the problem is that it's needed, but there's no way to do it perfectly.
Right. That's well said.
Yeah, and so it ends up having lots of issues.
So again, when we talk about quality parenting initiative and taking that on as a state, some of the components of that we have adopted are. Go ahead, Jack. Oops. Are you all set?
I'm all set. I mean, I can tell stories, but
yeah, go ahead. You tell stories then.
I mean, the building relationships. I think this is building relationships between the foster family and the bio parent.
Yeah.
Specifically, and I think it's important to realize that you do have two sets of humans with both of their intentions and their baggage and everything going on with it. And the foster family sees this child that was removed and wants to protect them, but the bio parent is a person too, and they're someone who has their child removed. And so the idea of empathy is really important, and constant empathy. So DCF does a lot of things to play with that. So an icebreaker where they have the bio parent meet with the foster family. And I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to talk about my experience, but we had a crazy icebreaker. Everything was fine, but we ended up going to a playground that was connected to a school, and they told us once we arrived that we weren't allowed to play at the playground. So we basically met in a parking lot. It was kind of very chilly. The kid ended up like having a poopy diaper right there.
Oh.
It was like, it was just very complex. And so, I think that's something that they try and avoid, but life is not avoidable. And so that type of thing is interesting.
Jack, do you have a lot of contact with his parents?
A lot. So we are very, again, like community is our thing.
Yeah.
So we're very friendly. Bio parent came to his last birthday party.
Yeah.
We basically opened our house to bio parent.
Yeah.
And so that is, I think, there are issues with that. I was just talking to a fellow foster parent from LA a few days ago, and I was telling them about our relationship with bio dad. And it's complicated because we are givers and we want to empathize and be nurturing also to bio dad without enabling him. And because it's complicated, and like this situation, he needs a lot of support, but our job isn't necessarily to support him. And if we're not going to be there after reunification, it gets very complex if we're going to be the supporters.
Right. And I tag that into facilitating contact, right? So that's part of that goal. So all of that is sort of extra contact that parent's been able to have, that because you're willing to do that.
And we get along with our bio parent.
Yeah.
A very nice guy, but I have heard stories of, a bio parent that yells at their kids a lot.
Yeah.
Not all bio parents are the same, and and not all foster families are the same. I've heard stories of a foster parent that kicked their kid out for coming out of the closet.
Yeah. Right.
Like, and to me, that's like not any better than yelling at your kids.
Right. Because humans are complex too, right?
Yeah, humans are complex, and we all go through stuff. But we have our relationship is great. And so we entered into it slowly and decide, and kept letting him in.
Yeah. Awesome.
For the benefit of the child. I mean, that's the
right. And so this is the number, guys. This is the number of children who are currently in foster care in Connecticut. A little over 3,200. This is sort of where we have been holding-ish, although I think in August we've started to see our numbers creep up a little bit, and I'm not certain, but I attribute that to we are finally post-COVID fully, I think, and everybody is back in school more fully, being seen in the community, being seen by mandated reporters. So our numbers are slowly rising. I believe in the month of August, we had 168 children enter care. I haven't seen September and October numbers, but we're starting to creep a little bit. And again, I attribute that to post-COVID, kids being seen in the community, kids being back in school, kids being back at daycares. And so it's increased our referrals, and has increased a little bit our number of children who are entering care. So that's the number of children that we are trying to accommodate every day in a foster care placement. So let me tell you a little bit about our kids. Oh my goodness, our kids are the best. It's probably the reason I have been here for 30 years, because of the kids. So they are diverse, kind, they are incredibly resilient. They have survived some of the craziest situations and stories, and yet are still have hope and are positive and resilient. They're scared, they're confused, they are all ages, all races, ethnicities, socioeconomic levels, sexual identity, all communities. They're everybody. They are the child that might be sitting next to you at church. They might be the child in front of you in line at Target. They may be the child sitting next to your child at school. They are any child. And these are the numbers of how they're broken out. So about 42% of our kids are in core foster homes. About 43% are in kinship foster homes. And again, 5 to 7% on any given day in congregate care getting specialized brief treatment. And we have about 8% of our children living in independent living. So they have completed high school or are completing high school. They may be in their own apartments. They're working. They're kind of growing up, unfortunately, without family support, but we do provide as much support as we can to help them become independent on their own.
Lori, do you know what the there are kids that are in foster care, and we hear a lot of kids that are bouncing around from foster care.
Yeah.
You know, like, not like a full percentage, but like, how many of these kids are in a more permanent placement versus like they end up getting bounced around? I guess you only know it in hindsight, but
yeah, and I'm not sure who keeps those numbers, Jack, but I can do some research on that. My experience is this, and I listen, I could be wrong. So what I feel like I'm experiencing or what we're experiencing at this point is the bounce upon entry into foster care because of lack of resources. So we are calling on families to really stretch outside of their comfort zone, their age range. So families, like I said, anybody can do anything for 24 to 48 hours. But then we're in that same boat 48 hours later. So I feel like we are seeing the bounce early on as kids enter care. And absolutely, you're right. There is some bounce, after kids have been settled in more permanent homes for a variety of reasons. It can be anything from a foster parent becoming ill or having a death in the family, or just giving up on a child sometimes. So there are a multitude, but at the moment, we seem to be seeing the bounce in the very entry into care.
And I will also say with this that there's a huge stigma against foster children, and we had it too. That I think our very first call were for a sibling pair who they were getting kicked out of a foster situation because one of them was biting. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm not bringing somebody into my house when I have a young child who's already biting. But then we ended up knowing the people who took them in next, and their situation was totally fine there. So, I even, like, our first call, I saw that I was stigmatizing the child already. And so it's sort of I don't know, it's something to think about, is like, where are our biases? And we think also that like trauma is something like, it's like an STD, right? It's like it's something terrible that somebody has, but then like you find out, like, we've done a lot of training about trauma, and it actually made me think a lot about like family and my friends, and everybody's kind of traumatized and has trauma in different ways. So it's not unique to these children of being traumatized, and it isn't something that should be stigmatized.
Yeah, and when you talk about that, Jack, about those phone calls of children who are being moved from one foster home to another, sometimes it's just as simple as the makeup of the foster home. So I had a little guy who was really struggling in a foster home, but there were 3 other children in there. And we moved him to a foster home where he was the only child, and he thrived. Like, so he just needed a different constitution of family makeup. So you're right, it's really easy to think the worst first. But for a lot of our kids, it might just be something as small as the number of children in the home. The other group of kids who get a really bad rap are our teenagers. No one wants to raise their own teenagers, let alone teenagers with trauma history. But I have met some of the most incredible teenagers. So one of the homes that just adopted yesterday, little guys, but they have 16-year-old twins also in care who they are looking forward to adopting as well. So some of our teenagers are really great. And again, the kids that we need homes for are our infants, who might require a little extra care, who are born exposed to substances and so may not be the easiest of babies, may need some extra holding and some extra skin to skin, and it may mean that you're not getting to your housework because you're spending more time caring for that child. But we have a high need for infants, our adolescents and teenagers, and our sibling groups. So when siblings enter care, 74% of them get separated through the foster care system. So for a variety of reasons, again, not just one reason or not just one particular reason, but these are our most significant needs. What I will tell you also about our kids, every single one of them, even those itty bitty babies, have experienced trauma. Those babies have experienced trauma in utero, which could be that mom may have been homeless. They didn't get enough nutrition. Mom may be involved in a violent relationship. There may be substances involved. So there's lots of trauma that baby's already experienced before they've even taken their first breath.
But trauma is not
children,
insurmountable. Yeah. That's and medical complexity is not insurmountable.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And again,
our bio child has a severe speech delay that we've sent him to years of speech therapy. And so everybody's got something.
Yep. Exactly. And so, again, the medical complexity comes with the trauma, right? That those kind of also go hand in hand. We have over the last couple of years seen a higher rate of children who are somewhere on the autism spectrum or have developmental disabilities. But if you think about that, when your brain is focused on getting your basic needs met, you're not necessarily developing some of your other, age appropriate skills. So again, with that time and consistency, those things do improve and get better. Some of our kids come with behavioral and mental health. They definitely have education gaps. They have moved, they have not finished schools. They've been in several schools in a year. So, and again, focused on meeting their basic needs, not getting their education needs met. Some of our kids have been victims of sex trafficking, and some are involved in the juvenile justice system.
I will also say it's interesting, the infant part, that I've met a few women now who only take in infants. Mm-hmm. And they're sort of baby whisperers, and they keep an infant for 3 months or 4 months and then don't want them anymore once they're crawling.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just so funny that everybody's got a niche.
Yes. Yeah. So one of my co-trainers, she and her wife are they are baby. They only take babies 0 to 1, and then they transition them to their next place. But that's their niche. But they have also maintained a relationship with every family that those children that they've had have gone to, whether it was relatives or pre-adoptive homes or bio family. They have so they don't adopt children, but they adopt families. They've just become part of their community. So it's kind of interesting to watch. So let me tell you about our parents, right? This might sound repetitive, but they are diverse. They are kind. They are resilient. Many of our parents have experienced their own significant traumas, and they have not been able to, they've struggled with that trauma. They haven't come out on the other side of that. So that sort of contributes to some of their parenting deficits. They're scared, confused, again, all ages, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all sexual backgrounds, all race, ethnicity, all communities. And what we see the most is parents who have had experienced their own trauma and have not been able to reconcile that. Addiction struggles huge here in Connecticut, especially in the Norwich area. Our numbers are really high for the last several months, but also those numbers are high nationwide. Parents who have significant behavioral or mental health and are not receiving treatment or are not following through with treatment, and intimate partner violence. These are generally or a combination of these are generally why children enter the foster care system. Anything else you want to add about the parents, Jack?
I mean, that covers it. It's all types of people, right?
Yeah.
And it's not all also like a violent, like, I don't know, you think fostering, it's either because someone was doing drugs or, I mean, it is all like something bad has happened if the child is entering foster care. But you never know what that bad thing was. And yeah, so that's complex. So I guess I wanted to also talk a few minutes about the show, and so the show is sort of separated into 3 sections, and the first section of the show at the Lyman Allyn is called the Foster Paintings. And so these paintings are a series of, I think there's like 46 of them now, but every time we've got a phone call for a foster child, I make a painting to remember that call, or sort of like, it's kind of like as a journal entry. And we can speak a lot towards that, but in part, I find them interesting because every call is also kind of like a fork in the road. There was a call I remember very vividly for a child with severe shaken baby syndrome. And that was when we were looking for a child to permanently adopt. And we had to dig deep inside and say, is that something that we can handle? And we decided not to, that it would probably be too difficult, especially with having a child that we needed to protect first and foremost, that we already had, kind of like the bird in the hand type of thing. And so that one, is very memorable. The 3 boys that we watched over Memorial Day each have their own painting. That first phone call with the sibling pair, and one of them was a biter. And I want to say, with the idea of the biter, like it sounds bad, but my wife has a good saying from her mom that all children are biters, hitters, or pinchers. Mm. And if you have a child, you're going to get one of those 3. And like, it's not a matter, like you can help train them not to do that, but you're going to find one of those 3 at some point if you're raising a child. And so anyway, these paintings are sort of talking about the past, remembering, also the idea of like the trauma that fostering comes from. They're very brief calls that we got. Some of them have no information, saying, we just have a kid that's 1 year old and we don't know anything about them. Can you take them in? And you need to look inside and say if you're willing to take that call. And I will also say that I was thinking about it yesterday, but I think the first like 20 something paintings were all infants for foster to adopt. And then after that was all emergency placements, kids ranging in age from, I don't know, 2 years old usually to 16. So I think we can move forward, but I think the point I want to get across is that These are sort of a divergence in timelines to me. And going back to this idea of nonlinear narrative, that I'll talk a little bit about when I'm talking about the vines in the show. I made these like sprawling vines that go throughout the show, and they're sort of saying like, we're all trying to find our path on this journey in life. And oftentimes it takes a right turn or takes a left turn, and we don't really know, or it splits. And so this is a close-up of one of the Foster paintings, and I'll note that physically, they're very textural and sensual paintings. That the blue background is all made from a printed velvet. You can sort of see this like diagonal light shadow on there, and on the one on the left, and that diagonal shadow is printed on velvet. And I get the velvet printed, and then I stretch it on for a frame, and then I make a gesture in the center in acrylic paint. That's I use a special acrylic paint that's very velvety in its nature too. So we have these like differences of textures that are happening, and so when you come up to them, they are very tactile.
Mm.
We can move forward.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about opportunities to assist. So again, greatest area of need are for our teens and our adolescents, newborns to 4, our children with complex medical needs, and our siblings. So one of the ways to assist is to become a licensed foster parent. And that is providing a safe, supportive environment in your home for children who can't live with their own families, and also being an ally to that child's parents and families. And although fostering is meant to be temporary, that child, we hope and will expect, will become part of your family. And again, we have core foster home, special needs adoption, kinship and relative foster home, respite foster home, and we do contract out our mentor programs at this point. But there's a different variety of ways to help through the licensing process.
So I'll speak briefly about the second room. So the show, for those who haven't been there, is split into 3 different galleries. And so the first room talks a little bit about the past and these phone calls. And then the second room has these 3 large paintings in the center. And those are referencing, if you can see within the central gesture, there are these like white broken lines that are dividing the gesture. And those lines are made out of gold, 24 karat gold leaf. And that is referencing this type of art in Japan called kintsugi pottery. And it's where you have a pot or a vessel that's ceramic that's broken. You attempt to repair it with a gold enamel or lacquer. So it's these really beautiful vessels that have these golden cracks within them. And part of it is about repair, and part of it is about like the meditation on making a point of hardship beautiful. And so this room, I think, talks about the present and trying to find repair in the trauma.
Mm.
We can go forward.
Yeah, so as licensed caregivers, some of what the expectations are is that you take care of the kids for their daily needs, as you would do any child in your home. Commit to shared parenting, which is really hard. So if you can imagine co-parenting with a divorced spouse, now you're co-parenting with probably 6 to 8 other adults, so it can be really challenging. To participate as a full partner of the child's team, because you are with that child for the majority of the 24 hours. So we need your input. We need to hear what's going well, what are struggles, how that child is doing and developing, and commit to being the last stop until permanency is achieved. So the more times that we have to move children, the more times that we create another trauma for them. So we ask for families to, hold out and be the last stop until that child either goes home, or you become the permanency home, or we find a permanency home for that child. So our motto is to stay home, to try to keep kids home, to once they enter care to get them back home, or to find a permanent home for them.
Lori, I just want to talk for a second about the notion of being part of a team.
Mhm.
And being part of a team is complex, both because you're dealing with other people. Like, participate as a full partner in the child's team makes it sound really wonderful. The reality of being part of a team can also be extremely complex. And as you said, like, co-parenting with a bunch of other people is complex, but also when you're part of a team, you don't always have agency. And that is something that I've learned to try and deal with. But not having agency in what's going to happen next is very complex.
Right.
And that's part of what it means to be part of a team, is that you need to let other people make the decision sometimes, and you don't get to, you can put in your input, but that's not to say that it's going to be taken.
Right. So we like to say that everybody's an equal partner, but that's not really true, because at the end of the day, we as an agency will make a final decision. So
that's not also extremely true too. I mean,
right.
like, you as an agency make a decision, but then that's also bumped up the chain, and eventually, like, a judge makes the decision.
Correct. Right.
And
Right.
so, like, every step of the way, it's never really been clear to me who is actually in charge.
Right. Correct.
And it was told to me as you're co-parenting with the DMV. And it's sort of like at the DMV too, like, you don't know who's in charge. Is it the person in front of you at the desk? Is it like some higher up in like a hidden office? Is
Right.
is it the paperwork that's in charge? Like,
Yeah.
just the bureaucratic forms seem to be in
Yes.
charge sometimes.
I'm going to steal that line, that you are co-parenting with the DMV.
Yeah, it's complex.
Yeah.
All right, we can move forward.
So our goal is always child-centered, right? So that's our approach and our goal, that all the discussions and all the decisions are made around what is safe, first of all, for that child, and best for that child. But again, to Jack's point, look at all the folks who are involved. So the resource family, or our caregivers, our foster families, the birth family, maybe some social aspects to that child's life, community supports, the school system, the child social worker, the court system, therapeutic services. There's a lot of hands at that table. So it is really difficult at times for everybody to agree. But at least we're asking everybody to come to the table with their approach to be thinking about the child first.
And you have a social worker as a foster parent, right?
Correct. So yes.
There's like another secret person that is watching you to make sure you're capable of doing the job.
Right. Correct.
Which, can get messy sometimes, but
I ran out of seats at the table, but you're absolutely right. So to that point, there are other, depending on cases and situations, there are certainly other folks at this table, so it can get crowded in there. Just saying.
The children have lawyers, and
yes,
it's all, which the lawyers you don't really see most of the time. It's they come in when something's actually going to court. But anyhow, so here is the final room in the show, and this room has this giant vine installation, and I decided to make it into sort of a lounge. There's a concept that museums are, there for you to come and walk and look at the art and not really engage. which isn't really true. Like museums are moving much more towards engagement. But I wanted this gallery to be fully engaged, and I wanted it to be fully engaged for the kids. So I put down carpeting, I made these beanbag chairs, and I put in some bookshelves with books, a lot of books on different art forms, and a lot of books on like the color blue, because that's one of the themes of the show. And then I have this central pot with these vines growing out of it, and the vines are, as I said before, sort of this allusion to the idea that life is not linear, and that it grows in different directions, and we're all trying to find this path. And I think we can go to the next slide. And so on the left, you see on the outside of the first room, the vines start growing out. So it's sort of like the vines are taking over the museum a little bit and growing through all the galleries. And I guess it both connects the galleries physically, but also connects all the concepts. And it's saying that, you know, the vines are sort of growing through this idea of the past, the present, which is about repair, and then the future, which is about how do we find our way forward. And then on the right, we have a close-up of the vines from a previous show, and I have these little purplish pink flowers in all of them. And we can talk more about that if we want, but the flowers specifically are referencing the saffron plant. The previous show I did was all about the spice saffron, and I thought it was interesting that saffron is the most expensive spice. And it's extremely, part of the reason why is because it's extremely labor intensive. And so I thought it was a nice analogy for fostering. Not that fostering is the most expensive thing, but it is, you know, emotionally and physically expensive for a parent of any kind. You know, raising children and nurturing is a taxing thing, and it is extremely labor intensive. But at the same point, it's extremely valuable. So.
And if I may momentarily join in for a little bit of the museum's perspective hosting this exhibition and the ways in which those vines in particular really draw you into each of the rooms. And it is such a different kind of stylistic presentation than what you think of for a typical exhibition. And the tactility really serve to bring you all in. But also referencing Lori's slide of, you know, who are the seats at the table who can support the child. I forgot to mention at the beginning that this exhibition and its programs are also held in support with the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut. And when we were in conversations with them to apply for the grant, is they really wanted to challenge us as a museum, which is, you know, they didn't want to support something that only had a 3-month run, but how can we as an organization rethink our being as a support, a community support for the foster families. And so with that, what we've done is tried to address some of our own points of accessibility for children. Here in New London, we have a pretty diverse community with English as the main spoken language, but also frequent and high rates of community speaking in Spanish, Haitian Creole, French, and Portuguese. And so the museum has started to slowly but surely, starting with our educational programs first, tried to expand our number of resources that we have on site so that if someone is coming and attending one of our programs, I may not be able to fluently translate everything, but we have improved signage that can point and direct to certain of the materials or the ways in which we will create art during both our family and our school programs. And we've also created sensory materials. Lori had mentioned, you know, art is often a way for people to process trauma. Museums, especially in the pandemic, were sort of seen as this place where you could escape, where you could feel safe and relaxed, although with the look, don't touch still as a layer. Um, but that they're especially not built for people with sensory processing disorders, where maybe that kind of look and walk is not going to be sufficient for someone. And so we've created and developed our own array of materials for sensory bags to help better engage and serve someone who's coming in with sensory processing needs, both for children and adults. And I'm also thinking about, again, what are the ways in which I, as an ally, can help to learn and support. I'm a huge fan of children's books. And so we've also incorporated a number of children's books, part of our normal child services and available tools that people can read at any time that address different concepts of family, are produced in different languages and things like that to, again, help hit that. How can we serve as a stepping stone as a community support for people? So the exhibition is here until December, and so for a couple more weeks, but taking this challenge very seriously is how can we be a better community support?
Yeah, so Eileen, to tag on to that, the day that I was there a couple of weeks ago, I think you do that naturally, in the sense of even the project you were doing with the kids and talking about picking a color and picking it about how they were feeling. Like, so just sort of teaching kids to identify their feelings and giving them a safe place to express that. So yeah, I think you guys are well on that track. So here is the job spec that we're putting out, for folks. Are you committed, dependable, patient, flexible? Do you have a sense of humor? Are you able to partner with our parents? And are you able to let go if need be, if a child is going to be reunified, but still be a support? Are you willing to ask for help? And it always is amazing, even, just thinking back to when Jack and Nora were in class and listening to Jack tonight, just sort of the evolution that they've gone through as a family in the 2 years that they've been on their journey. So being open to learn and being open to change, and reform your thoughts and what that might look like. And so the vines are really speak to that, because I'm sure they came with a thought and a trajectory, and that has changed multiple times for them. So these are the characteristics of our perfect foster parent, who does not exist, because a perfect person doesn't exist. But certainly these are some of the traits that we are looking for folks who are wanting to come and work with us and do this work.
I was thinking it would be maybe like the last one, learning to let go, able to let go, is like super important. But as I look at this list, I mean, nobody is this whole list, right?
No.
And even the ones in the list that you might think that you are, I would say it's more important that instead of saying, are you, it's sort of more, are you willing to work on your flexibility? Are you willing to work on your sense of humor?
Right.
Willing to work on being a better advocate? Right. If you're willing to try, I think that's the important part, not like, are you defined by this trait?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This person doesn't exist. But you can always reach for the stars, I guess.
Yep.
So a little bit about the requirements, not to get too hammering down on it, but you do need to be a Connecticut resident, 21 years of age, have a steady income. No one needs to be rich, but be able to take care of yourself and whoever lives in your household, in relatively good health, a safe home, background checks. There's lots of different checklists that we go through in regards to your home, if you wanted to move forward, that we would talk about and give you more information about. But these are sort of the big basic ones. And although we are not an adoption agency, we do provide adoption services for children who cannot return home. For the most part, the children who are adopted through our agency are considered special needs, in that the fact that they've entered care means that they have come from situations where there's probably some abuse or neglect. So there's a high level of possible emotional maladjustment, or they're part of a sibling group, or any of those types of special needs. It's not necessarily what you think of in special needs in terms of disabilities, that kind of thing. It's more generalized in terms of background, family history.
And as a brother to an older sister, I will agree that being a sibling is a special need.
Yes, yes, it is.
Siblings are tough.
Siblings are tough. And so many of our children who are adopted do come with some special, I don't want to say entitlements, but post-adoption. So their subsidies do generally continue. Their Husky medical does continue. And the opportunity for post-secondary education is also included. Currently, at the Central Connecticut State University rate, which I think is about $11,000 a year. So we do pay for secondary education opportunities for children adopted through our agency. And many of our children are adopted with open adoption agreements, which means that there is an agreement on how many times and what kind of contact you will have with families of origin, birth families, post-adoption. One of my dear friends, who is also a manager within our agency, has adopted through our agency, has a post-adoption agreement with one of her children. But that family has become very close, so they see each other several times a year. So there's an opportunity for that as well. Definitely our older children are considered special needs, and so those subsidies continue. We are different than private adoption, which generally means that a family has voluntarily relinquished rights to their children, and so they seek out a private child placing agency. Those agencies charge fees. We do not, but those fees can widely change. In the private agencies can do domestic or international. So what we do for adoption is really only the kids who are in foster care in Connecticut who cannot be returned home. And if folks were interested, you would fill out some paperwork for us, and then we would do a home interview with one of our social workers, complete documents, complete training, which is still primarily virtual, although we have been doing some in-person training. And just yesterday, we got information that we are going to be allowed to do a Weekend for a Lifetime event. So that's probably coming up in the spring as well, where we will provide lodging and food for, I think it'll be like 2 weekends. And do all the training sessions right in those 2 weekends. So we have a multitude of different days and times, and try to work with everybody around what works best for their schedule. We also do require car seat and CPR training. We will write a home study, and once you're issued a license, it is good for 2 years. And there's lots of ongoing support post-licensing. So like Jack mentioned, every family has their own support worker who is there to ensure you're doing what you need to do, as well as support you through some of the challenging moments that you will have with working with such a large bureaucratic agency. We offer support groups, peer groups, family activities, respite care, ongoing training, which is also mandatory. And we partner with the Connecticut Alliance of Foster and Adoptive Families, who also provides lots of support. So if everyone is not able to be a foster parent, but everybody can help. So I'll leave this up here for a second. And if you want to put the link in the chat, that would be great, Jack or Eileen. But even if you can't be a foster parent, you can help support our foster parents. And we have our Connecticut Alliance of Foster and Adoptive Families does have a Hope Fund. And that provides extra funds for kids to do different activities or different specialized needs that they might have, or different requests that might go through that fund. And with that, I will show you one quick video before we will open this up for questions. So this is a short video. It's about 5 minutes. Josh Shipp, he was a child who entered care himself. He was in care himself as a child, and tells you a little bit about his experience. And it's called One Caring Adult. He is now a motivational speaker. He's got a great little YouTube video out talking about your child's most annoying habit, maybe like what exactly they need to be really successful in their career as an adult. So that's also a great one to listen to. But here he is with One Caring Adult.
Tried to kill myself with a bottle of pills. And the fact of the matter is I trusted no one. And looking back, I guess, how could I? From the time my parents left me, to the time another foster kid raped me, to the time I was bullied so bad, I genuinely could not fathom a world where I could trust anybody. So fast forward, here I am, 14 years old, and entering my umpteenth foster home. I was a veteran at this whole sort of getting kicked out of one home, moved to the next. You meet these people who were like literally complete and total strangers 10 minutes ago, who are now apparently your mom and dad. You know, kids don't take candy from strangers, just move in with them. So I'm sitting in the van, in the driveway of this next home, and that's when I see Rodney. He's standing up there on the front porch, and immediately I notice, this is a large fella. He's 6'5", he's 350 pounds, and as a 14-year-old boy, I couldn't help but notice, when he's turned to the side like that, he's shaped like a lowercase b. It's amusing now, but in the moment it was tactical. Maybe that's how I could get kicked out of this home. Maybe I could get under his skin about his weight. So I move in with him. I'm being obnoxious, I'm being ungrateful, I'm being just downright rude and mean, I'm setting things on fire, and 3 years later, I can't shake this guy. Rodney won't kick me out. So I step up my game. I go to the local bank in town, I open up a checking account. I put about $90 in there. Then I proceed to write $10,000 worth of checks. Obviously, checks bouncing one after the next after the next. One check that bounced was for my car insurance. I'm going down the road speeding, Stillwater, Oklahoma, 88 miles an hour. No car insurance, no driver's license. I get pulled over, handcuffed, thrown in the back of a cop car, and sent to jail. I call Rodney. Like, Rodney, I'm in Stillwater, I'm in jail, I'll tell you the whole thing when you get here. Can you please come bail me out tonight? He said, I will come bail you out, but not till tomorrow. Rodney frustratingly believed sometimes one of the most loving things you could do for a kid was allow them to sit in either the success of their wonderful choice or the stupidity of their foolish choice. Next morning, he comes, bails me out, exactly as promised. We have a long, very awkward car ride home. No one says anything. We get back to the house. He's like, we need to sit down and talk. And I knew this moment had finally come. So Rodney, his wife, sit me down to give me the talk I've had a dozen times. He looks in my eyes and says, son, you can keep causing problems. You can keep trying to mess up. You can keep pushing us away. You can keep trying to get us to kick you out of here, but you've got to get it through your thick head, son. We don't see you as a problem. We see you as an opportunity. And in that moment, all my skepticism came to the surface. And I thought, what a cheesy, stupid thing to say to a 17-year-old kid. But then I was overwhelmed with the reality that this guy actually meant it. He didn't see what I was, what was on the surface, the obnoxious kid, the ungrateful kid, the kid getting suspended. He saw what I could be. It was genuinely my turning point. Statistically, I am supposed to be dead, in jail, or homeless. But because of one caring adult. I'm not a statistic. Every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. Every child who winds up doing well has had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult. My friend and mentor, Reggie Joyner, taught me to think about it this way. In this jar are 936 marbles. Each one of these marbles represents a single week from the birth of a kid until that kid turns 18 years old. So, if you know a 9-year-old, you've only got 468 marbles, or weeks, however you want to look at it, remaining. You know a 16-year-old? You got 104 marbles remaining. Right here, we are looking at time. In fact, you're looking at all the time or all of the weeks you have left to influence this kid, or this kid before they turn 18 and begin making critical life decisions without your presence. The difference between a statistic and a success story is you. With a bottle of
There you go. So with that,
So Lori, I just wanted to say something about that. The marble analogy is interesting because when we started, we were thinking a lot about that, like, again, that trajectory, right? That you have 936 weeks and like that and I think one of the flaws in that guy's story, which is a great story, but was that he was with this person, with the Rodney, for a long time. And such a great story that Rodney was committed and never gave up. But something that I've learned is that just one marble can be important. And so, like, let's say you have that, like, only 300 marbles left, but you put one marble that's like 24 karat gold in there, you still have a lot of money in, or like, it still has like that collection of marbles has a lot of value. And I say that because the idea of emergency care, I think, is so important. And when we did our first emergency placement, the kids stayed for a weekend, or like, you know, they stayed overnight maybe and then left. And I didn't hear anything about them ever again. And that's a whole other story that we can get into, of the flaws of DCF and be better at building community and staying in contact. But I felt so empty inside because I felt like it wasn't enough. That I gave this kid like a really good day, and then they just went on to whatever was going to happen. And that it like, and that I should be doing more, and it wasn't enough, and blah blah blah. But then I had a conversation with a fellow artist like a week later, and they were talking about their traumatic childhood and how terrible things were. But they remembered one weekend that they went to their aunt's house, and everything felt normal, and everything felt safe, and everything felt good. And sometimes that single memory is much more powerful than your daily life.
I totally agree with you. So from someone that I know personally, who is elderly now, talks about the social worker that was nice to her in the car. So I totally agree with you. Sometimes just those moments, even for me as a professional, when I don't feel like I have a lot in me, like kind of digging a little bit deeper, because just being that, giving that child one moment to hang on to sometimes is more than you ever realize. So,
and you never realize what that moment is, or when when it's coming, or what you've done. But like, I remember talking with my sister. She's always like, you told me something once that was really insightful, and I was like, I did what?
yeah.
And I have no like concept of the thing that I told her. But like, you never know what is the thing that's going to stick.
Right.
And I do think that this guy's story is super important, right? That like, he had an adult that was there for him.
Yeah.
It's on the other hand, his story is a little traumatizing.
Right.
But that story is important. But I will say the other side of being able to give a night is sometimes good enough. Like, good enough is good enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing a little bit, if that's your best, then that's great.
Yeah. And I will add to that it takes everybody's little bit to put the puzzle pieces together for kids. So whatever you can give, whatever that little bit is, it's needed to make the whole puzzle work. Do you all have questions for us?
And what I'll do now is I'll stop the recording.